What sort of treachery is this?
Stay back!
They're with us.
I would advise you to take your soldiers and extricate yourselves from the situation.
No! You're going to hurt him.
On the contrary, the Wookiee is worth a great deal to our buyer. Alive.
You can't smuggle living beings.
For the right price, I can do whatever I want. Now stand down or be destroyed.
You could call upon the seas to wipe clean your enemies. Would you watch the innocent casualties? I bet you'd be safely at home, shielded from this bloody control, drinking from the power in your hand, soaring through time and space. Cuts the air without a trace. Don't look back to see their face. The killing blows bloody, death from the sky. Whistle of howling wind sings sirens into the night. Into the looking glass.
Oh, greetings, bucketheads! Mavar Tigar. Welcome to the 189th wondrously Wookiee-filled episode of Mandovision. Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. The best way to reach out to us is, of course, on social media. We're at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. You can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, following, and sharing this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. Well, how is everyone doing? Welcome back. 2 days in a row. Can you believe it? It's happened. But it gets us caught up, and we're here for another exciting episode of Star Wars The Bad Batch. And let me tell you, folks, whoa, baby. I love this episode. I was a big fan. There were several moments where I got like the goosebumps, the goose skin, the chicken liver spot. I don't, whatever you guys want to call it. The hair, arms stood up on edge. It was wonderful. I had so many really neat little moments. The animation, the action, the score. What a fantastic episode this was. I was really, really happy with this one, and I cannot wait to talk to you all about it. So let's go ahead. I mean, there's not a lot going on in the Star Wars world right now. There's not a lot of news breaking or anything of that nature. You know, we don't know anything new. There's no updates really on anything. So we're just going to keep diving into this show, right? The countdown to Mandalorian Season 3 is on. And in the meantime, we're getting The Bad Batch, and I'm having a great time with the season. You know, there's been some, we talked about it yesterday. There's been some complaints, you know, too many filler episodes, too many side missions, blah, blah, blah. Well, then they hit you with the hammer. They give you this one. And this was a lot of fun. And again, I can't wait to talk to you all about it. I'm super stoked on this episode in particular. Let's go ahead and give out our episode particulars, right? This is Star Wars The Bad Batch, Season 2, Episode 6, Tribe. Original air date is today, February 1st, 2023. Written by Matt Mishnevitz, who does a phenomenal job. Directed by Stuart Lee, who does a phenomenal job. Our plot, The Bad Batch, help bring a new friend home. I mean, it's pretty on the nose, but I don't think you can really question the accuracy of that, which is usually the case with The Bad Batch, right? So our principal cast this week, and again, this one's interesting because a lot of actors who have main roles, but as different characters show up in this episode, like Nashir Dalal, who is normally Rampart, but is Axis leader today. Anyways, D. Bradley Baker is the Bad Batch and the clone troopers that show up. Michelle Ang is Omega. Shelby Young is the Axis droids and Yana. As I said, Nashir Dalal returns, but this time as Axis leader. And Jonathan Lapau steps up as Cartel Droid number 1, Gungi, the Trandoshan tank driver, and Trandoshans. So a lot of heavy hitting going on with some of the voice work in this episode. Um, and yeah, we spoiled it for you right there. I mean, this is it. We saw it in the trailers, in the images to tease this coming up season. We knew Gungi would return, and this is that episode. And I just loved it. I was just delighted, you know. And if you listening to the podcast as we've been doing our Star Wars, the Clone Wars rewatches, you would know that very recently we did the arc, the Youngling arc, where they go and they form their lightsabers and they get their kyber crystals, and Gungi's a huge part of that arc, and then all the run-ins they have with the pirates, and it's great stuff, and Gungi is one of the stars of it, and so we knew from the trailers, from the teaser images, that Gungi would survive Order 66, but like what was the context, what was the shape of that, and you know we don't know the extenuating circumstances under which he survived Order 66, but he has, and we find the situation. We catch up with him in a very not good situation. We'll talk more about that on the other side. But yes, it happened. Gungi, he's back, and it was awesome. All right, bucketheads, you know what we got to do. It's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
I'm Omega. What's your name?
My Wookiee's a little rusty, but I think he says his name is Gungi. You catch that?
He's been on the run since Order 66 and was attempting to reach the Wookiee homeworld of Kashyyyk before he was captured by those smuggling droids.
I'm not sure how you survived this long on your own, but it's impressive.
If he's trying to get to his homeworld, we can take him.
Been a while since we've been to Kashyyyk. The Empire could have outposts there by now. We don't know if it's safe for him there. He's a Jedi. He's not safe anywhere.
No, it certainly isn't safe on Kashyyyk, and I think a lot of us were maybe thinking that as soon as he said he wanted to go back, those of us who are you know, a little bit more well versed in the dark time period, you know, if you played the Jedi Fallen Order game, or read any of the books that sort of fill in the gaps, they talk about Kashyyyk quite a bit in that Aftermath trilogy. Yeah, and so we know, a lot of us know that Kashyyyk is not cool. It's not a good place to be right now. The Empire is in the time of Fallen Order. They're neck deep in strip mining the planet. The population's been enslaved. This is earlier on in that process where the Empire is just starting to begin taking the resources out of Kashyyyk, and they're still employing the Trandoshans to round up Wookiees and enslave them so that the Empire has a workforce. It's always sort of been interesting to me the Empire use of hiring the Trandoshans for this process, because again, by and large, the Empire is anti-alien. I still cling to that. I know they've tried to distance that a little bit in the new Disney canon, but in my heart, I know that the Empire is super racist and pro-human, I guess, is maybe the way that the Emperor would prefer to put it. So that's sort of been an interesting aspect of the canon. But the feud between the Wookiees and the Trandoshans is legendary. I mean, that's real lore. That's been in the old canon. That's been in the new canon. So that makes sense. So it also would make sense that the Trandoshans would reach out to the Empire like, hey, we want to do this. We want to get some Wookiee pelts. And if it serves your purposes and you throw us a couple coins for our efforts, why not? So we get into that stuff really, really quickly into some very familiar lore and going to familiar territory like Kashyyyk. You know, it's again, we're sort of doing this tour of the galaxy, going to familiar worlds from the prequel trilogy in particular, and seeing what the fallout is now with the rise of the Empire. And Kashyyyk is a very central world. And again, one of our favorite characters out there is Chewbacca. So we are intimately connected to Kashyyyk and its fate, and kind of seeing the process. The one thing that I couldn't help but think about is what's next for Gungi, because obviously this is new. We're bringing Gungi back now. We couldn't insert Gungi into Star Wars Fallen Order before, but now you have to wonder his fate, right? Like, does Gungi survive? Does Gungi get captured again? Does he get enslaved at some point? There's a lot of questions for the fate of Gungi, but by and large, that's not what this episode is about. It's about Gungi reconnecting with his people and coming back to Kashyyyk. And you have to sort of remember that when the Jedi take children to the temple to start their Jedi training, they're insanely young, and that's sort of hinted at, sort of alluded to, when Gungi doesn't know where he's going, doesn't really know anything about Kashyyyk other than what he remembers in his dreams. So I thought that was very a touching moment, that this sort of like wayward son of Kashyyyk returning home, but no familiarity, no understanding, doesn't know his tribe, doesn't know his people necessarily, but he just wants that connection to home. And he ultimately gets it, and it's really wonderful, beautiful stuff with the Wookiee tribe that takes him in. The way they speak to the trees, the way they speak to each other, their embracing of nature, which makes what the Empire is doing, the strip mining of the planet, all the more tragic. So there's a lot there to unpack and to think about, and I think it's good to think about these things, because again, there are real world applications, not applications, but real world crossover stuff here. Like, you can look at the situation on Kashyyyk and the Empire and what they're doing to the planet, and extrapolate that and put that on any number of situations here in the real world, which isn't always a fun thing to do, but in the world of science fiction fantasy, that's sort of it's nice to be able to have that comparison, and again, presents us with a better understanding of what these characters are experiencing in their stories, and I really like that. I want to go back though to the beginning of the episode, because we're skipping over a lot of it just to focus on Gungi, who, don't get me wrong, Gungi is somebody worth focusing on. But I want to go back to the beginning of the episode, and when we go to the space station, or our arrival at the space station, the Vanguard Axis station. I really enjoy space stations in general, and it's been fun in recent years to sort of see new and various types of space stations in Star Wars kind of getting a little bit more attention now. For the longest time, the only space station we were aware of in Star Wars was the Death Star, kind of a bummer of a space station. So it's been fun seeing other stations kind of emerge, whether in the various shows, basically, in the revival of Clone Wars, in the Bad Batch, in Mandalorian, in Andor, things like that. It's been fun to see that. So we get to see an all new one in this episode, and I'm a little unclear. A lot of stuff on Wikipedia refers to it as Vanguard Axis as the name of the station, but it also seems to be the name of the droid smuggling gang that controls it. And I really enjoyed seeing a droid gang in play, because it reminded me of something called, do you guys remember the droid Gatra? Excuse me, the droid Gatra? I believe they debuted, I could be wrong when they debuted, but I definitely remember reading about them in the Solo prequel book, the Most Wanted. They have been mentioned and seen, I think, even in the Dr. Aphra comics, mentioned in the Vader comics. I think they're mentioned in the Tarkin novel as well. So the droid Gatra was a sort of branded as a criminal organization, even though their whole thing was about droid independence, droid liberation, the end of droid subservience to other beings. So I immediately thought of the droid Gatra when I saw that this was a completely droid run outfit. But Vanguard Axis seems to be slightly different. They seem to be just more about being smugglers and earning credits and things like that. I don't know if they have a larger agenda at that point, or maybe they run parallel to the droid Gatra, or they have contradictory plans for the droid Gatra. It's who's to say, but I like the idea of just a gang of droids smuggling and doing nefarious things. And they are the ones that have captured Gungi. They have taken his lightsaber. They're holding him hostage. The Bad Batch is there to do a deal on behalf of Sid, of course. And I guess we have to wonder a little bit, right? Who is it that the Vanguard Axis is going to be selling Gungi to? Is it just to the Empire in general? Is it to the Inquisitors? Is it to Darth Vader himself? Or is it just to somebody else, like maybe Jabba the Hutt wants a Jedi pet for himself. There's a lot of things to kind of wonder about with that, because obviously if the droid Gatra was expecting a big payday they would have had to go do a lot of work to capture Gungi, I would imagine, because I would imagine he was not easy to subdue. But the moment that Omega arrives and finds him being hit with the stun sticks. Yeah, it just, I don't know, something about the episode's intensity just kind of ratcheted up a notch for me, and I got really stoked. And then there's the big standoff when the rest of the batch arrives to help Omega and Echo and Gungi. And Gungi, you see him put down the blaster because he sees his lightsaber on the hip of Axis Leader, and does his hand things because he's about to call his lightsaber. And watching Omega's reaction, because she hasn't seen a Jedi in action yet, she hasn't seen these sort of things. Maybe read about him, maybe seen a holovid or something like that, but it's like she's watching it right now happen next to her. And I thought that was a little interesting reaction on her face. And then the moment when he pulls the lightsaber back, snaps it on, and the music just kicks in. The Kevin Kiner score in this episode, again, I got the hair standing on edge. It was just really, really awesome. And so the batch, they do a lot of damage to Vanguard Axis. I don't know if they kill them all completely, but they kill a lot of them. There's a lot of dead droids in that space station now, and they make their exit. And that's when they're on the ship, and Gungi's sitting in the back because, again, he doesn't really trust the clones. He has no reason to. He's on the run from Order 66. He knows what the clone troopers did, and Hunter sort of has to explain that we are not like those clone troopers. We didn't follow Order 66, and now we don't work for the Empire. We are not friends of the Empire. You can trust us. And Gungi sort of reluctantly comes to that conclusion as well, and begins to eat like the MREs that they have, the MRE rations that they give him. And Omega, being Omega, is just overtly friendly and wants to help aid Gungi. That's kind of her thing, right? Like, finds people in distress and offers to help them. She just does the right thing, just does the thing that a good person would do. And so when they find out that Gungi's trying to get to Kashyyyk, they decide to go to Kashyyyk. And that's, again, this is like the heart of the episode, connecting with the people and Gungi, kind of learning his way around his own world, which is a lot of fun. Let me go ahead and cue up a clip for you.
We were soldiers of the Republic, but let's just say we don't see eye to eye with the Empire. We came because Gungi was in trouble. Jedi or not, he's still a child. He needs his people.
So before that scene, there was another great action sequence on the planet of Kashyyyk, as the batch comes across a group of Trandoshans in tanks, and they have a Wookiee prisoner, and they're destroying the land. They're destroying these carved stone pillars that probably tell the history of Kashyyyk and are sacred to the Wookiees. So Gungi springs into action and brings the batch with him. And again, it's another great action sequence. Gungi doing Gungi things, Jedi things, the Bad Batch doing Bad Batch things. They free that Wookiee, and then he takes them back to their tribe, and that's where we get that moment from. But that's a great action sequence too. This is an episode full of really great action sequences. And after that moment, we catch back up with the Trandoshans and the clones of the Empire, as they know that they're now on the hunt for a Jedi, because they saw the marks of the lightsaber on the side of the tank. This leads to another confrontation, or another confrontation is pending, basically. And the Wookiees have to decide what they're going to do, how they're going to spring into action. And again, you get that really wonderful moment where the Wookiees leave their hut and they go out to the great Rorschach trees, and they place their hands on the trees and they begin to commune with the trees. And there's that moment where I believe it was Hunter. No, it might have been. I think it was actually Tech who explains how the Wookiees, they believe that the planet belongs to the trees and they live in harmony with the planet and the trees. So it's again, you know what? Maybe I'll just play that clip. That might just be easier. I'll tell you right now, I was wrong. It's definitely Hunter who says it. So here we go.
What are they doing?
They're asking the trees for help.
They're talking to the trees?
They believe this planet belongs to the trees, and they are allies in this fight.
We'll take all the allies we can get.
And the trees have a pretty darn good plan. It involves drawing them deep into the forest and using the vast predators of Kashyyyk to defend off the Trandoshans, to defeat the Empire. It's a really great action sequence that comes up, and it gets it sort of reminds me. I can't help but think of Jedi Order. I'm sorry, Fallen Order. When you go to Kashyyyk and you have to do a lot of time in the treacherous depths of the forest, where there's a lot of predatory creatures around that you have to be mindful of when you're on Kashyyyk. And the sort of tree spiders in this episode, they come in pretty handy too, attacking the clones and the Trandoshan's and defending the planet from them. And when Gungi draws the enemy, the leader of the Trandoshan's, deeper into the forest, it's actually the giant tree spiders that come down and sort of who he had communed with earlier. It's sort of set up that he had established that he's not a danger to them. So they sort of like motion him to leave, and they'll handle this guy. And you see the Trandoshan leader. They don't focus on it. It's sort of just in the background, getting spun up in the web and dragged up into the trees where they're going to feast on that guy. It's a really pretty awesome sequence, but it's not the focus of anything. It's just sort of something you notice over like Gungi's shoulder or over Hunter's shoulder as they're. No, I think it's just Gungi's shoulder. I think he's the only one in the sequence as he's kind of making his way from the fire and the destruction that the Trandoshans have wrought in the jungle there, in the jungle forest on the floor of the forest. My goodness, I'm having a little trouble today. I'm very excited about this episode. But it's just a really great action sequence, and 3 really great action sequences really string this episode together. But there's really touching, quiet moments in it too, as well. Gungi again, sort of connecting with his people, connecting with Kashyyyk, and I think it's very interesting for us knowing the hardships that Kashyyyk is about to endure for a long period of time. Because that sort of makes this a sad episode in a lot of ways too. Like a lot of this planet, a lot of these trees we see now here in this episode are going to get raised or become part of the Imperial war machine at some point. This planet gets stripped, gets gutted pretty hard by the Empire, and they don't know that yet. And again, like I said, I think it just adds a little bit of a tragedy to sort of underscore the episode. It's lends it to a sad note for those of us who know the future of Kashyyyk, but maybe you have those blinders on and you don't know yet. And I'm sorry if I just ruin it for you and I let you know the secret that Kashyyyk is in for a world of hurt for a long, long time, as long as the Empire is still around, and even post the Empire for a few years after that. It's quite some time before Kashyyyk gets liberated. And again, now I want to know what kind of role Gungi will play in that liberation, if he makes it to that day or not. Very interesting things to sort of consider with that. So a couple more elements of this episode that I want to talk about before we get out of here is I really want. Again, it's a tiny detail, but I like Tech's goggles coming down. He has like that screen over his eyes as the Wookiees are speaking, so that he can translate and understand them in depth. Hunter seems to know a good amount of Wookiee, of Sharuk, but it's nice to have Tech there to sort of fill in the blanks, right? So you don't assume that Hunter is just like the master of languages, I guess. But again, it's a small little detail, and he just his blinders just come down, and you sort of see the transcriptions coming across his eyes, which is a nice little small detail. And then Yana herself, the leader of this Wookiee clan, of this Wookiee tribe, and sort of the way that she embraces and embraces Gungi and sort of shares their connection to the planet with the outsiders, basically. And that's Yana basically closed out the episode with some really good lines here. I'm going to go ahead and play it. Again, she's speaking Sharuk, and it'll be Tech translating, but Hunter has some parting words as well for us. And I think it's a really powerful but sort of sad and tragic dialogue as well, because again, we sort of know the fate that awaits the Kashyyyk and the Wookiees, and it's we'll just play the clip. Here we go.
They're both just kids, but they don't get to be. Not in this galaxy.
When a young one leaves, the trees weep. But when they return, the trees sing. As this child has found his new home, perhaps one day, we all will find a new path.
Hopefully, one far away from war.
Well, I got sad news for you, Hunter. The name of the show is Star Wars, and so peace is not Star Peace. Star Wars, my friend. I'm so sorry to break that to you, but I did like that moment at the end with Gungi and Omega. Omega in particular attempting to at least commune with the trees, and I don't know. There's just something sweet and touching about that, about her trying to understand the Wookiee ways and participate in it actively. I really enjoy the way this episode ends as well. This is a great episode. This is 8 buckets. I don't think I rated the last one. I'm not sure I rated much of season 2. I think I forgot about my bucket scoring. This is 8 buckets, though, easy. A big fan of this episode. I love what they do in this one. You got the classic blood rivalry between the Wookiees and the Trandoshan's. You get to see the beginning of the Empire stripping Kashyyyk of its mineral resources. I'm not saying that in a positive. I'm just sort of, in a historical context. We're seeing the beginnings of that thing that we know is coming. And again, we're seeing the Batch do a good thing, spurred on by Omega, but she doesn't have to twist her arms in this one. They understand that Gungi has an uphill battle ahead of him, whether the Empire's on Kashyyyk or not, just because he's a Jedi. So the least he could be is with his people, for the struggle that he has coming his way. And again, I cannot help but speculate about the fate of Gungi moving forward. Would love to see more stories with him in them. We'll see what happens with that, if we get more of those or not. But this was a really solid episode. Great action sequences, great dialogue, a lot of fun little things here and there. I love seeing this droid smuggling ring, and then again going to Kashyyyk, a planet that we know so well from our time as Star Wars fans. And as season 2 continues to sort of take us on a tour of prequel worlds, and seeing the aftermath, like what's affecting them, what's changed since the Empire has risen. And I'm really enjoying that aspect of season 2 quite a bit. So yeah, 8 big old buckets on this one. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. That's really all I want to say about it. So what else? I don't know. Like I said, there's not a lot of Star Wars news right now. I want to get you all ready because there will be 2 episodes next week. I sort of teased an episode the other day. I had to sort of rearrange the schedule a little bit, but you're getting 2 episodes next week because February 7th is Star Wars Podcast Day. That is the day in which a lot of the Star Wars podcasts out there, I think there's over 100 plus lined up to participate in Star Wars Podcasting Day. It's when we sort of all pause and acknowledge the very first Star Wars podcast, Jedi Talk, that came out, I think it was 24 years ago. February 7th of this year marks the 24th anniversary of the very first Star Wars podcast. So we're delighted to be back participating, sort of paying our respects and homage to sort of the progenitor, the podcast that started it all. There's a million Star Wars podcasts, almost literally, out there, and we're so happy to be part of the big community of Star Wars podcasts. We're so happy that we have so many wonderful listeners, and it's a wonderful time to just sort of highlight the podcasting Star Wars community out there. So the hashtags are out there on social media for Star Wars Podcasting Day. Click on those. Maybe you'll find some new Star Wars shows you like. Just don't leave this one, please. Please. Always be a part of Buckethead Nation. All right, that's the main goal. But hopefully we'll drag some new people into Buckethead Nation as well. That'd be a lot of fun too, because the more the merrier. We got plenty of buckets to share with people. All right. So yeah, get ready for an episode on the February 7th, and we'll be back for February 8th for the next episode of Star Wars The Bad Batch, because we can't stop, we won't stop podcasting about Star Wars. It's just too much gosh darn fun, and that's all there is to it. All right, so I will leave you all now. Thank you once again for listening. My name is Tom, Nargai Tom. This is the Mandovision Podcast. Follow us on social media at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. Email the show. Hit me up with those long-form diatribes at mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, following, and sharing this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. If you want to support the show, another fun way to do so is 5-star reviews. They are a big deal on the Apple Podcasts. They really help the small independent shows like us stand out, not get lost in the shuffle of all those mega corporate podcasts that now fill your library feeds. Oh my gosh, so many podcasting networks out there that want to squash us and make sure that you can't find us. But we will always be found. We will not go away. we we will rise up like the end of Andor. Don't worry about it. All right, let's go ahead and get out of here. You know this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
I would like to see the baby.